Hello and welcome to Read Becca. Today we're going to do a little bit of an impromptu video. Steve Donahue originated the Books and Life tag yesterday, and it seemed like it's mostly opinion based. I really like those kind of tags that you can just talk off the cuff about your thoughts and don't have to pick specific books. So this is going to be a bonus 4th of July video for you all. So let's get right into the prompts. Prompt number 1 is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a normal person and 10 being the late Harold Bloom, how much are books and reading a part of your life? So given that Steve ranked himself a 9, I think I have to put myself at a 6 or a 7. Using kind of the methodology he did, I rarely spend any time that I'm not either reading or thinking about reading, but I am kind of a workaholic. So I do work very long days in a technology career, and a lot of the time I am very flexible there, and I am working from home full-time currently, so I can sometimes be e-reading while I'm doing work or multitasking and watching booktube videos while I'm working, but very often my work consumes my day or even week at a time, and so that can eat up a lot of time. I also, specifically within the past year, but previously, I'm a big animal lover, so I have now a dog and several cats, and I also foster cats, and fostering has become a bigger part of my life in the past year. I did take on fostering with the move to staying at home full-time in the pandemic last year in March, and that has really taken a big focus. Right now I have a medical foster, so he takes some extra work on a daily basis, and so that definitely draws my attention. So number 2, where does your personal library stand right now in relation to the rest of your life? Do you have more books now than you have ever had? Fewer? How has your library changed? So I think that my library, without a doubt, is the largest it has ever been. Even in childhood, I read a lot and I felt like we had quite a few books, but it was nowhere near what I have. And that is an intentional choice. So coming up through college and even the early years after my career, I pretty well limited myself to a single bookshelf just because that seemed normal, I guess. But I've always had a great love of books. So previously I was doing a lot more churn and not purchasing more than I could take in and put out in terms of what I had read and unhauling things. But now I've made the conscious choice a couple of years ago that I have become a very heavy reader, and that books are such a huge part of my life. I want to have a large collection. So I let myself start really buying large amounts of books secondhand and through charity sales, and I've collected those. So these shelves behind me are relatively new. I redid this room and had planned on wanting to get a wall of shelves in here for a while, but I did that last year. And so all of these were mostly in boxes because I had started collecting them but didn't really have anywhere to put them yet. And so that was a vision I had for the way I wanted my home, and I own this house. So I was able to finally do that, being in a home that I own. So now I am up to around, I've got to be nearing 1,000 books. My previous last count, I was getting close to there, and I've probably purchased enough in the past year that I'm very close. So that is by far very much more than ever before. Number 3, take a mental step back and ask yourself, what is the most likely first bookish impression a newcomer would have in your home? So coming into my house, I think the first impression is literally a console table in the entryway that has 2 rows, and that it's a bookshelf. It's my physical TBR shelf for the year. So that is the very first impression. Then when you go from my entry into my living room, I have a nonfiction shelf and I have a very large fiction shelf, and the fiction shelf has my favorite authors on it. So they're kind of immediately coming in and seeing a diverse taste of books and my very favorite authors. And beyond that, I think probably the biggest first impression for anybody entering my house is I don't have any technology on my main floor. I have furniture and I have bookshelves full of books. So that's pretty abnormal. And for me, that creates a calming environment in my house where I don't have, computers and smart devices all over on my main floor. I'm just living surrounded by books. And that's not in a hoarder way. I don't have lots of piles of books. They're all shelved. But it just is a comforting thing, I guess, for me to live with books all around me. Number 4, how often, if ever, gulp, do you clean or reorganize your books? It's been very much more frequent in recent years because, as I said, I got these new shelves last year, and that resulted in a complete overhaul of everything. I had to pull out boxes from my basement and get all of the books reorganized and grouped together, kind of what authors I wanted to go together. And then I got 2 new bookshelves this year just recently, and I did some reshuffling based on that. So I did basically a yearly re-clean of everything. But I would say maybe once every 2 years I do a cleaning. So that's probably not sufficient given that I have pets in the house. Things get very dusty very quick. But that's what I can do. I'm not a neat freak. I do dust the shelves. I just don't pull books out and clean everything off on top of them or behind them or anything. And then I think as far as shuffling books around and moving things, really on a normal scale, it's based on unhauling things. So the vast majority of things that I get, that I bring in, I am not planning to reread or keep. Most books, I'm not a huge rereader in the first place. I maybe reread 1 or 2 most years. This year I'm making an active effort to reread things that I like. But for the most part, I'm going to get a book, have it on my shelf. Once I read it, I will decide if that's a new favorite or a series I want to continue with. And in either of those 2 cases, I will probably hang on to it. If it's something I don't plan on continuing with, and I liked it, but I don't plan on rereading it, it's going to go to a secondhand store or get donated to a library. So it's not going to stay in my collection. So that space is going to be freed up for something else to move in. So I'm constantly churning through things in my own collection, and that's pretty standard. Number 5, on average, how many books do you acquire in a given week? So a week is an odd period, but I am someone who reads a ton from my library. So I read probably in the range of 100 library books per year, and then about 30 to 50 from my own collection per year. And when we're talking about the library books there, it's really like 2 to 3 a week would be a very normal rate for me for what I'm bringing in from the library. In terms of my personal collection, it's very much in spurts. So I obviously, almost everything on these shelves is unread, and I could pick up a ton of books from here. So what's coming in is pre-orders, which I do very, very few of. I rarely buy brand new books. So I'm buying, 3 to 5 pre-orders per year that are brand new. But then where I'm getting most of my books is not a weekly basis. It's things coming in big piles from a charity shop or a charity sale. We have a couple of very, very big charity sales in the area, so it is not uncommon for me to go to one of those and pull, 30, 40, 50 books from a single weekend of a charity sale. Number 6, what song is your current earworm? I would say my perpetual earworm is Lacrimosa. I'll see if I can find a video of that and link it. I'm sure I can. So this one has personal significance, I guess, because I was very into choral music. I went to community college first before I went to university, and I had kind of 2 paths coming out of community college, and was applied to 2 different programs at different schools and was accepted to those 2 places. And the one that I got scholarships for was a technology program. If I had gotten scholarships for the other one, I would have been a choral music major, and that obviously didn't happen. My life would have been very different, especially, right now, as things have been shut down for the past year. I can't imagine that choral music programs are doing terribly well through all this. So instead, I have a technology career now for, almost 20 years, and have been able to work from home for the past year, and that has been great. But I still have all of that love of choral music, so that is one that is just constantly running through my head. Number 7, what percentage of your self-control do you retain in a well-stocked bookshop? So it depends on what we're talking about with a well-stocked bookshop. I think probably the last well-stocked bookshop, if we're talking about some place that has everything you could think of or want, was Powell's, and that was maybe 3 years ago. So I very rarely am in a well-stocked bookshop. Usually I am in these secondhand stores and charity sales. And for me, it's the thrill of discovery is what I'm there for when I'm book shopping. Same with the library. I love library browsing because I like to be able to just go look and see what I can find on the shelves. I almost never plan my things that I'm picking up from the library. So I have very low self-control in those scenarios. We have very large charity sales, I think I've mentioned, and some of those we even have as large as an arena sale in one of the larger county library sales that is in a very affluent county, so they have really good finds. And we're talking like arena where they do the monster truck shows, that size, and the entire floor is books. So if I go there, absolutely, I will go 2 or 3 times in a weekend, and I will just load up as much as I can carry. And even, at most of these sales, they will have their final day will be buy a bag or buy a box for $5-10, and I will completely fill a box and not have any problems and be beyond what I can carry. So it is very, very normal for me to come out of those with as much as is possible and kind of overdo it. So low on the self-control, but when you're going to those things, Steve talks about the Brattle all the time. You're paying $1, $3, $5 for these really nice copies of things, and it's just such low risk. You can't help but come out with some good finds. Number 8, do you ever feel the need to take a break from books, and if so, what form does it take? So I rarely do. My break from books, I think, is really that I read so widely. I read all genres. I read nonfiction and fiction. So if I'm not feeling like reading a certain type of book, I will read another type of book, and that's not a problem for me at all. I did have a very long break in reading, though. Like I said, have been a workaholic. So when I got out of college and went into a career for the first time, all of my energy went into that, and I just dropped everything that I enjoyed in life. And so it took me multiple years of being out of college and figuring out my footing and having a career before I started trying to do things that I enjoyed. I started gaming, but really it was about a decade before I got back into reading at all. And for that decade, I was reading no books per year, 1 book a year, and that was it. And then the first year it was like a book a month when I first started reading again. So that was my break, and I have, I don't regret it necessarily, but I do think back on that and think, why did I stop doing this thing that I really love? And I could have had that thing I love the whole time with a few adjustments in my life. So, it was a trade-off that now I look back on, and I don't really ever want to repeat that. Number 9, when you meet a new person, how long does it take you to bring up books? Probably not very long. I don't know that I necessarily would say specific books, but my life is so ingrained in reading and books that just having conversations, I immediately think of things that I've read. And so I may bring up facts or information that I have read in a book and, may not reference what book it came from, but, oh yeah, that reminds me of this thing. Or even, podcasts, same thing happens with those all the time. But in terms of actually like getting to know people deeply, I definitely would bring up books. That's kind of the first thing that I want to know when I walk into somebody's house. I want to go find their bookshelf and see what's on it. Because the people that I'm friends with, that I really have a connection with, they also are book lovers. Maybe not to the degree that I am, but they also really have an interest there for the most part. Number 10, have you given any thought or made any provisions for your personal library after you broke? So not morbid at all. I haven't specifically to the library, but the person that I know is getting my house at this point, I think would have an interest in, well, I know would have an interest in having more books than they do currently have, and has similar reading interests to myself. So I think that would certainly secure their future to some degree. But beyond that, you know, Steve brings up the Brattle and the facts of people's entire collections being donated. My collection is functional. It's not, it is loved, but it's not something that I'm wanting to keep in a glass case or anything. I want the books to be read, and they're not particularly special to me as a collection. But they have brought me an immense amount of joy going into these secondhand shops and charity sales and finding those things. So I do not have a problem with all of my collection being donated and returning to those $1, $3, and $5 shelves and bringing someone else joy, even if half of them get scrapped. Because for the most part, they are just books, and you know, a lot of people are e-reading now. So I would love to see the money donated to charity, if that is a thing, or seeing those books make it onto those sale shelves. Either one would be an immense joy to me. So number 11, are you known among your friends and loved ones for your weird and probably unhealthy relationship with books? I don't know if I say weird and unhealthy. Beyond normal, so yeah, I guess that is weird. Yeah, I think so. I think I probably am. My friend group, kind of like I said, when I get to know people, I really am looking for people who are nerds, who do like books and reading and being curious about new information. So those are the type of people that I am connected with, but I am much farther above and beyond in reading, you know, 100, 150 books a year. That's not something that typical people are doing outside of BookTube. So yeah, I think they probably know me as the book weirdo. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed hearing what a nerd I am about books. If you want to do this, if you don't follow Steve, you absolutely should, and I will link everything below. If you want to do the tag, if you want to talk about your book life, you should. And that is it for me today. Thanks so much for watching, and if you feel like you want to see more from me, you should like and subscribe.